number 1 of the final game of the International Wildcard Qualifiers. Winner of this best of 5 makes their way to Worlds. First ban we see coming through on the Shen, Lyon Gaming taking on Albus NoX Luna.
All right, well, we've been talking about it a lot. These bans, these picks, the priority, the powerful laners that these players are looking to get. And so far, it seems that only standard bans are coming out. Nothing too special. We wondered whether or not you'd look to target ban Miracle, but right now that doesn't seem to be the case. But it's interesting that we are seeing the Sivir ban from Albus, because we talked earlier on about how they themselves have not put much value on it, but they have seen it out from White Lotus. So they're just saying, we don't even want you to go anywhere near that. We're going to stick to things that we're comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big disengage force coming out of Sivir and Braum. It will allow them to pick the team fights that they want. Trundle is still available, but so that's going to be interesting to see if Giral does pick it up. We see it from Giral and Arceus, so that's a flex in and of itself. Might even be first pickable.
There's actually quite a lot of things open. Right now, I feel like you have to ban the... A jungle ban I would have expected, but I was not expecting a Nidalee ban. And the fact that Gnar was left available, and that comes for the instant first pick, really... I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Gnar right now is arguably the strongest top laner in the meta. We have seen Smurf bring out the Fiora, so he can save that one for a little bit later. But it's the risk now that you take, because you prioritize the Gnar, you have to give away something like the Rek'Sai or the Gragas. But because both are still available, the other team can just take the other one.
Yeah, they were definitely looking towards getting that Gragas pick. It's interesting that they did ban out the Nidalee, because we especially didn't really see it out of Audi. We've seen one game from him. He doesn't really prioritize it, perhaps. The style works well for him because he does look to skirmish and challenge the enemy jungler, and they've secured themselves a Gragas pick, so that works out well.
First rotations, both teams seemingly getting what they want here, that Gnar being a very hotly contested top lane champion, as well as Smurfs, Jhin, and the Gragas in the jungle. But that allows them to get the Cassiopeia on the side of Lyon Gaming here. What will they lock in their second rotation here? Just giving us a little bit of a preview of all the champions available.
Support would make a bit of sense right now. You could go for something like the Taric or the Tahm Kench. The risk that you have is the potential brand coming out. So I think Lyon are going to hold on to this, or not. They're just going to go for it straight away. So, but yeah, the support pick you could also go for. The Tahm Kench is relatively safe, but as we were just talking about, there is then the risk of the brand pick coming out.
Well, yeah, exactly. And with the Tahm Kench coming out, brand it feels like a pick that will 100% come out. So it's interesting to see that Lyon has actually left open the brand, left open the Jhin, allowed this team to pick it up, challenge it in lane, and we'll see how it goes, because they've actually left it open, and they have not picked their bot lane at all. So Lyon could just go for a pure out counter pick. Let's see what they go for.
Well, keep in mind, the first time we saw Arce on that Kench, he got the 2v1 double kill in the bot lane. So we know this guy can play a bit of Kench, but there's the brand, there's the Gangplank. Haven't seen Gangplank filter through the ban phase too often here, but ANX going to be picking that one up for themselves.
All right, so already Albus is setting themselves up for spending a lot of time in the top half of the map, enabling their 2v2 in the bottom lane to be strong enough to hold their own. This is very typical from Albus. It seems that they are still sticking to the playstyle that is that they have relied on throughout the tournament, and the fact that Lyon have decided to go for the Ashe Tahm Kench bottom lane is somewhat of a standard bottom lane. It's very powerful, it scales very well. Typically it trades fine in lane, but they're going to have a rough time up against the Jhin and the Bard. In terms of the overall comp, I am ever so slightly in favor. It's actually it's a tough one to call, because both have strengths and weaknesses to their comp. I think the biggest difference is the arguably slightly stronger engage coming out from the side of Lyon, but much better poke from the side of Albus Noox. So I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I love the fact that we have Audi versus Licorice, because I feel like that's how the game is going to end up going. Audi has picked himself a stronger jungler in this scenario. If we do have the initial shove coming in from Lyon, that they can track PvP stages, and we will see perhaps even a bottom lane gank pre-6, definitely going to be impactful post-6 with that Ashe.
I wonder if that matchup was predetermined, or whether they just see Licorice get Bard and they're like, all right, he's a feature matchup. He's got his Bard. Let's just, Brand, sorry. Let's just put him in there and see what happens. But they pick up the Varus for Kira here. So first time playing Varus in this tournament, is going up into the Cassiopeia, say, as most played champion throughout the tournament here. So interesting to see some new things coming out of Albus Noox.
Right. We wanted to see Kira bring out something unique, and he has decided to bring out the Varus. Not completely unconventional. We have seen it over in the LCK a couple of times, and we're going to see how it works out in this pick composition that they've accrued for themselves. Definitely powerful in the later stages. The amount of poke that they can throw out underneath these turrets is fantastic, but we don't have enough time on that because it's going to be game 1.
Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Game number 1, Lyon versus Albus NoX Luna, taking it to the Rift, finally stepping onto their beloved map here to take the first game in this best of 5 that will result in a ticket to Worlds. So pretty big stuff here, guys.
Yep. Now, we need to get into these matchups very quickly because I feel like we're already going to see a bit of action early on. Because we'll start with the bottom lane because this is where we have the brand. This is where we have a lot of exciting stuff. And what you have to remember is that if you're a melee going up against a ranged, typically what happens is the melee will always want to do a camp. So they'll either want to do the Krugs or the Gromp. And if you're going up against a brand, the brand will want to invade and just interrupt it. Then they will get to lane sooner, they'll get the early push, and then they can set themselves up for a successful laning phase. Whereas what Lyon want to try and do is they want to try and set up some vision, they want to try and expect it, and you can see that ward in the river predicting Albus trying to come up with the invade, because it is extremely difficult for a range support to be able to do that early Gromp and get that early level 2.
They're actually just going to walk, right? They're either going to walk in a different direction, or they're just going to try and zone them from the wave.
So basically what will happen is they've moved very far up into the lane, and because you'll take a fair amount of damage from that camp, they're just going to sit and wait, and they're going to catch you off guard. You have the W proc from the Jhin, you have the W from the brand, you can easily set up for the stun, or the roots even, and you can actually get a lot of damage down. It's a matter now of whether or not Lyon will expect this.
Yeah, Ashe has to use her W on that push 100% once she gets into that wave. If she doesn't, it's going to be fairly disastrous.
You can see the votes 91% in favor of Lyon Gaming, so the fans making themselves known here. And oh, here's the poke going to come out. White Lotus holding on to that W. Unfortunately, might not get to see it here as a good trade coming out in the mid lane. But one thing I want to note, White Lotus did take that Warlord's Bloodlust, so he's expecting to take damage in this lane.
Before the camera moved off, we did see White Lotus kind of walking a little bit, moving a little slowly, so they definitely did it. Yeah, they definitely expected it.
Himself,
they definitely expected it.
So that was a good awareness from White Lotus. But it's one of those trial and error things where you've played bot lane so much, like, they should be invading us. They have not invaded us. They have not gone for the early shove. Therefore, they must be sitting in this bush waiting to try and set up some kind of a trap. So, good start for Lyon in the bottom lane, and good start for Lyon in the mid.
Whew.
All right.
All right. He avoids death on that one. That's a flash from both parties, though. Licrit already making his invade coming up. Doesn't hit the Pillar of Flame. Seer does land. Oddie just backing his way out of that. That's quite aggressive considering that your mid laner is nowhere to be seen. He's back at base.
I'm very surprised that Oddie didn't actually turn on that one. He had level 3 to the level 2 of Licrit.
Yeah.
Early game at least has a lot of damage, but instead he decided not to go for it. So
one thing about Licrit is that he has like an 81% kill participation, highest of support, so he does actually just roam out anytime he can. So Oddie probably was just really scared about it, but he didn't know where the enemy jungler was.
Thing is, he probably did it because Albus had pushed the wave underneath the turret, and so there was nothing that he could really do, and rather than try and harass them underneath and waste his very small mana pool, he instead decided to go roaming and see if he could find any cheeky setups. But I just want to backtrack a little bit to what happened in the mid lane, because this matchup, early on, will go in favor of the Cassio, especially at level 2. There are very few champions in the game that can trade back with the Cassio if she's able to land that poison successfully, because one of the weaknesses that Cassio has is that if you're going for trades, it's very easy to burn through your mana pool, but the amount of damage that you get from hitting a poison target is worth burning that mana for him, which is why he was able to push Kira out, especially when Kira didn't have his full setup yet. So early on, it's actually very difficult for the Varus to trade back efficiently. He needs to get a couple levels under his belt, and he'll mainly rely on that poke from the Q to trade back with the Cassio.
Yeah, exactly. A big point, too. We saw it just in camera a little bit, where he will walk out of vision to the left of the lane a little bit just to try and get as much poke as possible. A good setup for when he does walk up to contest the wave.
You can see the Pillar of Flame just landing time and time again, but look at the junglers up in the top already. We mentioned and this was going to be a very top-heavy game in terms of jungle pressure. Neither of them making their presence known just yet, but lurking around.
And the thing we have to remember, like, we've talked now about the bot, we've talked about the mid. the top lane is the most one-sided matchup out of ever, really, because Gnar into Gangplank is a well-known matchup that heavily goes in the favor of Gangplank. I know in the LPL it's a little bit different. As we see Gank in the mid.
might be in trouble. He doesn't have the flash, but the flash body slam from Seos misses, and
no.
Seo, he might just be turning this one around. He's looking hypey right now. Seos forced a body slam away, and that was just impressive fancy feet work.
Yeah, exactly. He was able to walk in and out. He didn't get the body slam flash off, unfortunately, so that just set it up a little bit awkwardly.
And Steya, he would have gotten the kill if he'd landed that poison. It would have been enough damage to turn that a 2 versus 1 around, but this is the risk that you have going up against the Casio. Her early damage is absolutely incredible, and you really have to show it a lot of respect.
Look, did he warm up by watching Impact in the top lane there? That 2v1 is looking so damn close, so unfortunate, but early attempts from Steos to get the mid lane ahead. He knows he's struggling a little bit, and both summoners were down, and Jarol just keeping Smurf under tower.
And this is what you'll typically see in this matchup. The Gnar, because he has the range advantage, because it's so difficult for the Gangplank to trade back, he's regularly going to get pushed under his turret. And this is actually why I like the Elise pick a lot. We saw it early on from Oddie, posturing around the top half of the map, and I feel like he should try and do that again. It's so easy to dive with an Elise. You have the Repel, you have the Cocoon, and the Gangplank can only use his orange to avoid one of those CC abilities. So
yeah, exactly. As you said earlier, that this Gnar is a very one-sided matchup. He actually can get to a point where you can solo dive. Let me just look at top.
Going for the switch here, so they really don't want the Gangplank just getting zoned even more so. We mentioned this was something that INTZ did quite well when they find their top laner behind, so it's good to see.
Yeah,
ANX
exactly.
Adapting to that.
This is something that we usually don't see from this team. We usually see elongated laning phase, but they've recognized that their top lane matchup is fairly poor. Don't want to leave him alone or actually get to a point where they are in a time sensitive place where they have to get a play going early at level 6 towards bottom side, or else they'll completely fall off in terms of their composition and their lane strength. So they get 6 minutes in, they just roam top and look to go for that swap.
Looks like we do have a pause coming out here, but you saw the crowd, they're still just as excited as ever. Nothing going to dampen the mood.
And, I mean, it's good to keep your spirits up when you're in a very high-pressure situation like this. A pause can do benefits for some teams. It can affect others. I know when speaking to Perks a few times, if it has to sit through a pause during a best of 5 like this, it just infuriates him. He just gets really tilted. He gets affected by it. Whereas other players appreciate the small break. All they want to do is just like, hey, you know what? I'll take a few minutes, sit down, evaluate the map. They're not allowed to speak to one another, but they can just figure out their next move. And given that we've just seen Albus rotate the bottom lane up to the top half, they realize the pressure the Gangplank is under, so they've tried to catch the Gnar off guard, and this is a good response coming out from Albus. They haven't allowed that very difficult matchup in the top side to suddenly snowball out of control.
Yeah, exactly. And so as you said about the pause, it's a perfect time to pause, at least for Lyon, where they can check out what's just happened. Obviously, Jarol has recognized that Brand is in the top lane. You have to assume that Miracle is following up with him. So how do you want to respond to that? Obviously, they can't talk to each other, but individually, they know their roles in that position and what they can do to either prevent that. Maybe they want to stop the dive. Maybe they're just not in the position to even go for it and try to go for their own bot lane shove themselves. Probably not the best idea. Maybe they have to just take the chip damage and go for the defense.
So is this we know it's a good adaptation, but is this a bad scenario for Albus NoX to be in, considering that they picked this very strong bot lane to kind of get themselves ahead here, but now it's forced to rotate out because the Gangplank's doing so poorly? Is this? I know it's a good adaptation, but is it a good overall way that the game's heading for them?
Well, I don't think it's negatively affecting them. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a detriment to the side of Albus, because at the end of the day, it's a team game. You need all of your members to be strong, and if you can build up an advantage in the bottom lane, but is it going to be a big enough advantage to compensate for the deficit that the Gangplank is going to be put under? And from what we saw, White Lotus and Arce were not actually that far behind. They were holding their own. They were trading pack fairly evenly. The use of the Tahm consume onto minions to then throw them at the brand, so you can actually trade back. If you also use a proc of your, I forget the name of it, the Relic Shield, you can also then use that as an effective way to provide sustain for your AD carry, and they were doing fairly well. So the better decision is, okay, we're pretty even in the bottom lane, our top laner is struggling, our mid laner is struggling. Stasios, we see him, he puts pressure in the mid rather than the top, so that top lane pressure has to be alleviated in some other way, and this is the best option that Albus have available to them.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw Licrit's interview. Even though primarily, if you are a mage support that's looking towards getting as much damage, if you're like, for instance, the Zyra or the Brand, getting yourself in a lane swap situation where you're not going towards the matchup is fairly damaging. But Licrit's actually really comfortable. Doesn't really care if he's not in the lane, even if it isn't a swap. Actually, we're just seeing some action here.
Also getting quite hurt here. They might be going for this first turret. Jarol nearly mega. There's 4 members top flash. He actually gets Smurf back in. He eats an orange, gets himself to safety. Stun coming through from the Seer. But look, 5 members coming top actually for ANX.
Man mode Jarol right there jumps into 4 members, but primarily using that ultimate to actually clear out the minion wave to keep that turret alive a little bit longer. Note that they've kept White Lotus in the bottom lane. 3 members of LYN are still in the top half of the map, and they're going to try and use this 3-man squad to keep the turret alive, and here comes the arrow.
It's not going to be seen either. It's going straight through Pinkwood. They're not going to know what's coming.
Oh, it actually hits onto Licrit. That's a long stun. Do they have enough time to get it? There's first blood, and it's looking bad. ANX, they might have to back away from this one. The perfect consume keeps Oddie safe.
So well played coming out from LYN. The cross-map arrow onto Licrit to then follow it up with the cocoon. We saw Stagios try and be that body block, but it just was not enough. And LYN, they net themselves first blood.
Exactly. And so biggest point too is the fact that not only was White Lotus across the map, so you get the full extension of the stun duration, but Cassiopeia was shoving out that lane so well. So the fact that there was no vision from the bottom side through the river to the top side meant that that Ash arrow went undetected until the very end.
And Saya just nets himself a free blue buff on the end of that one. He's been pushing up the lane. White Lotus did a number on that bot lane tower, but as we can see on our screen, ANX, they have rotated back down there to protect that.
Now, you asked earlier on, Rogi, was this a bad decision from Albus? The decision itself, no, but the execution, yes, because everything has gone in favor of LYN very early on into the game. You've got an assist onto Jarol. This is going to give him an ever so slight gold advantage, especially seeing as he also got, he was involved in the first blood. Oddie gets the first kill on an Elise, and you got a huge amount of damage down onto that tier 1 turret in the bottom lane, and now Smurf is still in an unfavorable matchup. The map has not opened up, and if anything, LYN are actually going to get that first tower gold before Albus are going to be able to. So, all in all, LYN having a fantastic early game so far.
Yeah, exactly. So now ANX, they've gone to a position. Albus Noox have decided to actually buy 5 refillable potions throughout the entire team. It's an efficient way. It's fairly risky. If you go into your lane matchups, if you do make a mistake, if you do fall behind, sustain will not be there, and it's only going to get worse. So now they're actually banking on lane matchups, putting Gangplank back in that unfortunate position. If he does fall behind, they need to play around it.
Miracle and Licrit, they're just going to have to try and hold this tower as long as they can. Back up in the top. You said it, Smurf, he's back into that losing lane now. Oddie's down here. They really want to force this tower.
Keep your eye on Stagios. He is moving to the bottom half of the map as well. LYN want to try and force this turret down, and given how low it is, they may very well be able to do it. They just need to be careful of the Gangplank ultimate. Coming in from the other side of the map, acting as effective wave clear. But now Jarol, he could be in a position to set up a dive. Obviously, it is a little bit risky, but given as to how strong he is right now, it is an option available to them.
This just puts Smurf in an even worse position. The fact that not only is he stuck in this matchup, the trade-off should be in the fact that he can go and make cross-map plays with his ulti. Now that it's on cooldown and in a defensive manner, not able to get any plays off it just to clear the wave on an inevitable shove, taking this first tower, break gold, he's just going to be stuck in this matchup with really no positives.
And he's got no support either, because Oddie has moved around to the bottom half of the map. He's just keeping up pressure with his dual lanes to try and siege onto this tier 1 tower, and that's forcing Stagios to respond. He's being dragged down to this bottom lane, acting as an extra wave clear and losing out on experience and farm, but LYN are fine with this happening because it's enabling Jarol to just continue pressure into the top side. So they have 3 pushing lanes right now. Look at the difference in the mid lane already developing.
And once again, we see Oddie just not wasting any time, using his time on the map so efficiently, constantly putting the pressure where it's necessary. And that, like you said, it's forced Stayhurst to actually react to that, someone who wants to be spending a lot of his time on the top lane, and the gold lead already in favor of Lyon Gaming here.
Yeah, that gold lead, it is a big point. Mostly simply because that they are getting shoved in. You mentioned it, Vedius, that the constant shove coming through. It is interesting simply because Albus Noox got the picks they wanted. They have the Jhin, they have the Brand. Unfortunately, that provides them skirmish power, but if White Lotus and Arcee simply don't look towards the skirmish, if they just try and shove out the lanes and put Jhin in an awkward position where he's farming under tower, then that's their plan. That works out well for them.
And if they keep this up, they're going to be in a great position to move towards this first Drake of the game, which is the Infernal. You want to try and pick this one up relatively early because the sooner you take that first Infernal, it increases the chances that there will be more Infernals to take. And so if you can get yourself 3, then that's great for a teamfight composition that LYN have been able to build themselves up. I say teamfight, I mean, it's pretty good at skirmishing as well, which is very much LYN's playstyle. They prefer to be lane dominant, try and find these 2v2s and 3v3s around the map, mainly Oddie being the facilitator. As we see an arrow in the bottom lane.
Oh, once again, onto Licorice. There's the tongue lash. Oddie trying to come in for the kill. The cocoon lands, but there is a Pyroclasm bouncing on everyone. The Brand passive doing so much damage. Cannon Barrage coming on in. Is the burn enough to take out Arcee? It's not. But once again, LYN overextend.
I really hope we get a replay of that as Oddie flashes in.
Can't seem to find it. The cocoon goes wide. Here is Steos. Has the flash available. Goes for it, but no body slam to follow. Looking for something. Gets the slow. Has the ulti. Can he make it happen? No. Repels to safety.
He wanted to find the time to get that body slam in. Not only did the Spiderling stop them, but the incoming wave as well. So he really couldn't find that opportunity. Tried to put out the cask, and of course, she's in spider form. Not going to happen.
I can't believe that Albus were able to turn that around so effectively. That Brand damage was absolutely unbelievable. The fact that all 3 members of LYN stacked up. You had the passive proc 3 times. We don't have time for that because the Dragon's starting off.
Teleport coming in for Jarrell. They really want to commit to this one. Oddie's too low to overextend, and there's the ulti coming down from the Varus. A beautifully timed repel, but there's a curtain call onto Jarrell. That's 2, that's 3. Ooh! Oddie narrowly avoids that one. Last shot, though, hits Jarrell.
That's going to give some space, some retrieve to Smurf now that the TP didn't really come out of positive. He is now on the opposite side. He has to now travel top side. That's going to give some space for Gangplank to actually get some farm under his belt.
And as you rightly said, drawing that teleport away from the Gnar is going to relieve a little bit of pressure from Albus, but fortunately for LYN, they're able to get themselves the tier 1 in the bottom lane. So that'll be the first tower gold. Smurf is going to be able to respond in kind in the top half, and now the map has opened up. The first dragon is gone, and this is where we should start seeing what else the teams have to offer, because you now want to look to try and get that tier 1 in the top side. You should send your bottom lane up to that half of the map. You have a freeze being set up by Miracle in the bottom half of the map, so you can actually send 4 members strong, push as a unit to try and take that tier 1 turret down, and then you can move around to the Rift Tower, move around to mid. There are plenty of options available. I honestly feel like freezing for Miracle is one of the worst decisions that they can make right now.
Yeah, exactly. So one big point that I actually want to look towards, I think we're going to actually run into a pause. Here we go. So one big point to look towards is, in the bottom lane. Brand, of course, did a lot of damage in that skirmish, was able to turn it off, got a kill for himself, which is a major plus for this team. They're fairly unorthodox, especially in how they have their gold shares coming through. Not only is Licrit have the highest gold share of supports in the league, but A Miracle actually has the lowest gold share, simply because that's just been their priority and how they actually want to output the gold, especially since they have an extra threat coming up for them.
Look, and when Pyroclasm is bouncing between 3 members consistently, passive proccing and Pillar of Flame getting that 40% damage increase, you can see why they prioritize this Brand. That fight went from 0 to 100 at the click of a finger.
Thing is, at level, I believe, 6, the passive does 4% of your max health per proc, and then at 6, 11, and 16, it progressively gets stronger and stronger, and it can go up to 12%. And I believe we're actually going to get a replay of the earlier fight where you have that cross-map arrow. You can hear the crowd excited with the cross-map play. The whole setup was just fantastic coming out from LYN. I mean, the play itself was promising. They were very committed to trying to take that tier 1, and that over-committed play is what resulted in their downfall. So really good response from LYN to net themselves that first blood. But then just that bottom lane fight, as we were just talking about, the fact that you have 3 of those stacks, each hitting 4% of your max health per proc, on top of the Pyroclasm, on top of the Jhin, it was just an unbelievable amount of burst that the Ashe just was not expecting at all.
Exactly, and they were trying to reach in for that extra kill, which is why White Lotus, he did go in for it, got the brunt of it. But this is another point about just melee matchups. We had to have, or at least RC had to walk in to at least get towards the added kill. Unfortunately, that means that the 3 bounces are going to come forward. They had no opportunity to really disengage from that extra damage. A, they didn't think it was going to kill them. B, they needed to get that kill to make that gank worthwhile.
Well, that's the funny thing. They're getting slowed by the Gangplank ulti. Once ablaze, Pyroclasm also gives them a 40% slow. There was really no way but forward at that stage. They had to go for something, and unfortunately, it was one step into the grave.
I think they could have just been happy with the fact that they burnt the brand flash. But instead, they decided that they wanted to commit to the kill. But nevertheless, they still hold the gold lead. They still hold the kill lead. And Ashe losing her life early on isn't the worst thing in the world. Especially seeing as the kill didn't actually go over to Miracle. So it shouldn't be that bad overall.
Yeah. Fun point. Magic 10 boots on Brand at this point, so extra 20% damage.
So ouchies is the technical term, I believe. But look at what Oddie is trying to do right now. Actually standing on top of a ward, hanging around the top half of the map. Surprised that White Lotus is still in the bottom half. We were just talking about this setup where LYN should have considered rotating their team to the top half of the map. And the reason, the reason why Miracle actually set up the freeze was for Smurf. So he could then rotate around to the bottom half of the map, pick up that wave, and now he's actually managed to get himself a CS advantage as well as complete his Trinity Force. So I want to take back what I said earlier. That was actually quite a smart play from Albus, just trying to help out the Gangplank, get him through what was a very rough early game into now a point with which he's actually very strong.
Good job by ANX to cover their weaknesses here. And Smurfy had a terrible time early on, but they've done a great deal. And I guess that's kind of facilitates Stayhost, right? He is all about getting his top laners ahead. We've seen in the videos that he's kind of the captain, the loud voice in this team. So when he's not jungling to get his lane ahead, he's making sure that their other laners are helping get this top lane ahead, putting a lot of priority into making sure Smurf is a relevant force.
Now Gnar is in a bad position at this point. Long lane up against the dual lane of Brandon. Ooh.
Crystal Arrow does connect. No cleanse this time. The damage coming out onto Kira. There is the Petrifying Gaze. It's enough. Cannon Barrage comes in for safety, but they're going to be looking for this tower. Do they have enough minions to get it?
They're
very
definitely
clean kill.
going to.
Very clean kill. That was a really nice setup. Liked it from White Lotus. The fact that he just threw out the arrow. Easily lands onto Kira. He does not have the cleanse, which in all honesty I think was a mistake. I thought that was a cleanse, but it was actually a ghost. He ends up giving away his life, and this is the advantage that you have when you open up the map. So well played by LYN.
I feel my favorite thing about that was just hearing the crowd go, ah, as the ult's coming on through. Just gives it that extra bit of immersion here.
Yeah, as a player, you're sitting there wondering, wait, what are they cheering for?
It's like, what's happening? One big point is that they couldn't actually convert that into the tower kill simply because the wave that existed was fairly small, very thinned out, and the next wave was still at base. So the extra time, ANX Albus NoX knew that, so they kept their bottom lane towards the top side and repelled the push coming in from Doral. It was still a good look, good answer by Albus.
But look at the setup now for LYN, because there was a massive minion wave in the bottom half of the map, which was accrued because they did not send anyone to actually shove it underneath the turret. Seiya has now moved to this side because he wants to try and catch someone out of position, but the actual wave management from LYN is not as effective as it potentially could be. They could have sent White Lotus around to either the top half or the middle of the map earlier on. They could have moved Seiya into a side lane, and they're a little bit behind the mark. They're not setting themselves up to take that next objective. They're very much just trying to either look for picks or respond to the pressure that Albus has been trying to put down. But to be fair, LYN have done actually a very good job at responding to all the plays that Albus have been trying to make.
Yeah, exactly. They've lost the inside track here towards this tower. Ooh.
Well, White Lotus does get saved by Arce. He's doing a great job of that. Pyroclasm does bounce between the two of them, but on the brink of death, White Lotus survives, and both of them a little bit hesitant to start the fight here. Trying to get their skill shots in. The CC's not connecting. Flash by Lacrit, not able to find it. Forces the Ghost Flash out of Seiya. Steos under tower. Doesn't enable them to take it.
But this is what we were talking about earlier on with your lane assignments and your wave management, because Lyon were just completely out of position. They were nowhere near that mid tower. They had no way to properly defend it, and they had to come in from an awkward angle where they ended up burning almost all of their flashes. And we've praised Lyon a lot for their ability to snowball an advantage and play around an extended laning phase, but right now we're seeing that Lyon not necessarily being able to properly play the map.
Exactly, and they were ahead of the curve simply because it was 1 minute and 10 seconds until this dragon came up. They really wanted to have control on it, but because they overcommitted to the control, they lost mid-priority completely. Albus NoX completely shoved them out, and so at every point they tried to regain pressure, regain control. Didn't work out for them.
And it's just like you said, VODS, the best thing about an early Infernal Drake is there's chances for more, so we'll be seeing our third one soon as a replay coming through here as well.
But this was really well done from RC. He was able to come in and save a flash, I want to call it the flash gobble. Ate up White Lotus because he was in a really poor position. He was the only one under tower simply because the rest of the team was simply not in position. They needed to take the long path, but they became greedy. They wanted to go for the straight and narrow.
Curtain Call comes through, actually gets blocked. The Ashe ultimate, that is Abyssal Voyage under tower to make sure that White Lotus has some support. The Gangplank ulti not proving to be enough.
You have to be afraid. PvP Stagos is sticking to this. They're going to go for this tower, but they have a lot of poke coming at them too.
Well, look, once White Lotus has that fully stacked Q as well as the Runan's Hurricane, that minion wave is definitely going to thin out.
I feel as though Lyon should have just sent their dual lane to the top half of the map. They're still trying to keep these standard lanes, and we're already seeing White Lotus being forced to use his flash because he was by himself in what was effectively a 1 versus 4, because you had the Gangplank ultimate, you had Stagos coming in from the flank, and then you had Miracle and Liquid in the lane just trying to put some pressure down. They could have looked to try and take that tier 1 on the top side, but they're determined to keep this Gnar going up against the Gangplank, and I feel like this is just tunneling too hard on trying to keep standard lanes when Lyon, in all honesty, have more options available to them.
I mean, that was the question we've had from the very beginning. They've been fairly, I don't want to say reliant on lane abuse, but they actually favor it quite a bit. So their their top side right now has a great lane, but they're willing to give up what is their composition, sticking Ashe into this lane, especially since the Ashe Arrow ult will be coming up soon. So now they're just limiting themselves.
I mean, the ideal setup for Lyon is to just send the Ashe and the Tahm Kench mid, and then you put Sarah in a side lane and you have Dural in a side lane. But that top tower, they had multiple opportunities to take it. They could have just sent White Lotus up to the top half of the map, pair him up with Oddie. You can use Dural as well, and you do effectively what Albus tried to do at the start of the game, where you have a 4-man unit, you just siege down the turret. Albus will respond in time, but what you've done is you've effectively opened up the map. And once all these tier 1 turrets are gone, that is when you can, as a team, set up for this 1-3-1 composition, because there is no real answer for Cassio and the Gnar in a side lane when you're running someone like Avaris.
Yeah, exactly. But this is actually a really good look towards PvP Stagos. He's gotten picked, but he's going to be fine. He's actually been showing a lot of pressure towards this bot side, able to really play to their strengths at this point, something that we had a few questions on.
Kieran making his way down, does have the ultimate. We can see Saya on the map through Red Buff, so this could potentially be a 4v4, but Lyon do have the tower to defend them. Ulti from Kieran not going to land, so they might want to just call this one quits for now.
You're seeing the power of Albus's poke right now, and in all honesty, Lyon are struggling to deal with it. They don't really have the sustain, and this 4-man unit will eventually whittle this tower down. In all honesty, Lyon are just doing what they can to defend it. They have the Ashe for an engage if they want. They also have the teleport from Dural, but it's going to be difficult for him to set it up.
Curtain Call being used. White Lotus might be in trouble, gets sniped from the complete other side of the lane. Now this might finally be the tower. The snare comes through. Do they have enough to connect? Stayhost had the flash available, chose not to go for it. Didn't have vision on Oddie. Just backing off.
That was a mix in good and bad. Great from Albus NoX. Smurf's ulti made it fairly hard, fairly difficult to save White Lotus. Primarily, of course, you'd want RC or Audi, somebody to look to body block White Lotus, but he was in a position in which, honestly, White Lotus had to be doing the dirty work of just walking towards one of his allies.
And, I mean, I'm baffled by Lyon just determined to keep this 2 versus 2 lane there. They were up against a 4-man unit. In that situation, you just kind of have to push out the wave, accept that you're going to lose that tower, and try to make a play somewhere else on the map. or you just commit to the fight, because you know Albus are going to try and force it. Gnar was in the middle lane. He could have looked to rotate down. You could have looked to try and put a ward in a position where he could try and TP in for a flank, and then you forced the fight. But LYN didn't do anything. They just sat there, they ate the poke, and they just waited to eventually lose that tower and enabled Albus to just do whatever they wanted.
Well, I understood their thought process. They thought they could stall it out for Gerald to really force the pressure mid. He was chipping down that turret. They thought that would be the answer. That would take away the pressure from Albus NoX. But Albus NoX had the answer. Smurf is always going to be answering Gerald. Even though he can't face him 1v1, he can clear out waves, and he can make Gerald's job at looking to pressure the towers especially hard.
Interesting that Gerald's actually decided to go for a dead man's plate second. Typically, we do see the black cleaver come out to help up with your side lane pressure. So we actually saw a cheeky Baron coming out from Albus NoX, but there was vision from the side of LYN, so they did get to spot that one out. But yeah, this build, I'm not sold on it from Gerald. I feel like I can understand the armor. I mean, you have a full AD comp aside from the brand, naturally, but I feel like if you're going to go for that side lane split push play, then the Black Cleaver would help a lot. And in terms of the actual 1 versus 1, I feel like Gangplank may very well have an edge.
Stay is just walking headfirst into a lot of damage here. They might want to go on to the kill to White Lotus, but the Cocoon comes through just in time. Stay Host, he's quite low. Do they want to go for a teleport coming in on Gerald on the back? The snipe! White Lotus showing that Miracle's not the only one with the sniper skills here. They do trade jungler for jungler in this exchange. There's a curtain call. Arce, he may have bitten off more than he can chew, which is saying a lot for a Tahm Kench. He gets blown up, and now Gerald forced to waltz his way on out.
This poke is just ridiculous from Albus. They are going to get themselves, I believe that was the 3rd Infernal Drake.
Second for LYN.
But I mean, that was crazy. I was very surprised by the amount of damage that Albus were honestly throwing out. LYN had no reliable way of forcing that fight, largely because Albus are just doing a great job of kiting back. They stayed under the safety of their turret. Gerald had no opening, and I actually believe he didn't have his Mega Gnar available either. So things are getting much harder for LYN to really set any plays up because of how much they get poked down before they're really in a position to force a fight. Yeah,
it's really overwhelming for Lyon Gaming, going up and trying to get a pick or going up and trying to force a fight, especially since Smurf right now, they failed to keep him down. He's in a position where he's farmed himself that Yomu's Ghostblade, has the BF sword to his name as well as the Trinity Force. His ulti is going to be doing tons of damage. So the zoning force from his ulti, especially the Jhin ulti, and on top of that, Licrit's Pillar of Flame is going to be doing so much damage that it's so difficult to get yourself out of a fight or get yourself in a fight.
Ooh, Kira flashes in, does get the ulti down. Seiya with the perfect Zhonya's Hourglass to avoid the explosive cast. Doesn't matter. Abyssal Voyage in. Gerald's now in the back of the fight onto Kira, who's been exhausted. Ashe ult comes through, lands onto poor Gragas there. There's the curtain call once again. Arce being caught out here. Now they've got their sight set on Oddie. Can they get it in time? Does just nick a Spiderling.
That's just absolutely ridiculous. So that was a good play, or at least a good call from Lyon to continue, but of course, Gerald might die.
He just gets completely blown up. That's the brand passive for you after the Deadly Flourish hits. That's a free Pillar of Flame passive comes on through, just completely destroys the tank.
I'm telling you, I don't care about the result of this game. I want to see the damage of Brand after this. His passive is incredible.
He's going in once again, unable to find the Seer, but White Lotus narrowly avoids potential death from that explosive barrel.
And a lot of that damage is coming from the fact that there is little to no magic resistance on the side of Lyon. These magic penetration boots do so well when you have such a small amount of MR that he is just shredding through the lineup of Lyon Gaming. And in all honesty, like, Lyon are really struggling to find any answers because Albus, it is just poke, pick, and it is just rinse and repeat. What Lyon really need is to set up some deep vision, try and come in for the flank, but in terms of the matchup, yes, this heavily went in favor of Seiya. He actually built up a massive lead during the laning phase. You can still see it in terms of the CS difference, but when you think of it in terms of a composition, Cassio has no effective way to close the gap onto the backline. That Varus and that Jhin have such long-range abilities that Cassio can only really focus the Gragas. And sure, Stasios, he's taking a brunt of the damage, but by the time you've killed that Gragas, you've pretty much lost the rest of your team. So just look at the situation this Cassio is in now. sure, you can get a lot of damage down onto Stagios, but it doesn't matter because the backline can just clean you up. And then here you think that Lyon can force a fight.
It feels like going straight from replay to reality here. Brand gets caught. Gragas, the next one to follow. Jirel in the back does have the Mega, but that's a double kill for the immobile Cassio. She's finding a way to leave her mark on the game. Now Smurf actually going to go down. That's a 4-0 in favor of Lyon.
So Cast the Curse kicks in right there. I try to say that the Cassio can't get onto the backline, then he just goes and does it. And a large part of that was because Albus were trying to siege onto this mid-tier 1. They ever so slightly overstepped, and Lyon were able to punish them. Really good response, and now they're trying to get themselves a Baron.
Exactly, and now they've looked to finally get it. This is really well done from Lyon, able to turn the game. Absolutely phenomenal.
And just like that, a pick onto Brand just completely translates into 4 kills, gets the Baron, and we're going to see how that fight started. Once against the Ashe ult.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, Caster Curse gets in. He was able to ulti right in. But, of course, Albus Noox, they've gotten to this point in the game where they're able to get the poke on first, just completely poke them down with Varus Q, but they kind of stepped far too forward without actually putting in the work initially.
Yeah, the problem that they had was the fact that Brand was on the front line when you really don't want the Brand on the front line. Note that there are 2 QSSs completed, one for Kira and one for Miracle, yet these Ashe arrows are not actually hitting either of those targets. They're either going onto Stagios or they're going onto Liquid, and they're always resulting in some kind of gain to the side of Lyon. So very impressed with White Lotus's use of the arrows to get these picks down onto the primary target. Well, not even the primary targets, just targets that is resulting in an effective advantage.
Something that's going to be hard for Lyon to actually deal with is build up against this team. They are going up against primarily AD. Ooh, that might not result in anything. So yeah, they are going up against a primarily AD composition, except for the fact that APV Stayhouse is doing quite a bit of damage. But on top of that, Liquid has a Revitalized Crystal Scepter, so he's going straight into damage. Not too sure what his next item is going to be.
Haunting Guides, most likely, just to add a bit of penetration to his build. But now the Locket is finished for Arce, which is a really big item to help manage some of the early base damages that Liquid is able to put out. So on top of that, I believe we see the GA completed now for Jirel, GA completed or on its way for Oddie. And so this front line is becoming a little bit tanky, but look at Jirel.
Oh, just completely getting dived under tower. Not sure where the camera's going, but Jirel, he might be going to the grave here. They do get the top tower on the back of that. Saya now maybe in trouble standing in the cannon barrage here. They are able to find one. Jirel's GA not saving him this time.
Now, Jirel overcommitted to it. Oh, very nice flash from RSV, but Jirel overcommitted to it. He just wanted to stop A Miracle's ulti from going down. Of course, then he saw a potential kill, but he's right in enemy lines. He needed to back away from that, and it didn't work out for him.
Speaking of enemy lines, Stayhouse, he's in his own jungle, but it's not his jungle anymore. He has to respect the control that Lyon have exerted right now, and looks like they will be transitioning a small loss into a small gain, getting themselves that first Mountain Drake.
So a lot of ultimates were used from Albus to turn that fight around and get themselves a kill onto Jirel. That GA was unfortunately wasted. But we have to look at the overall net gain that Lyon got from that Baron. They got the tier 2 in the bottom, they got the tier 2 in the top, and even though they did lose Jirel and his GA, they're now looking to put pressure down onto this tier 2 in the mid. And if they get it...
Arce once again getting his team to safety. There's the Varus ult, not going to connect. Oddie is quite low, but gets sniped. Kira, he's got the lens on today. No one's safe.
Game of snipers, and they're going to try and set up for another one as White Lotus is in a lot of trouble.
He's able to, once again, Arce gets himself to safety. Saya just flashes on in, but may pay for it with his life. Actually, no! There is the hourglass in time. White Lotus, look at the goal of this guy just jumping straight in.
Yeah, he's going straight in for this, trying to clean up Miracle and Smurf. Exhaust down on that one.
Yep, that's the cannon barrage. Arce this time maybe bitten up more than he does. Gets sniped by the deadly flourish here, so Miracle able to answer with one, but the pressure is not letting up for Lyon.
We're going to need to find another word for snipe, because I feel like that's the only one we've got right now, as it is happening back and forth. Saya going in for the flash ultimate, just so aggressively into so many members of Albus NoX when it looked so dire for Lyon. The immediate follow-up from White Lotus as well, flashing in to the members of Albus to just provide that extra support was phenomenal from Lyon.
That's just when you look into the dictionary and find the definition of outplay, because Albus NoX were in a perfect position. The ulti comes through, they're just trying to get White Lotus. He's out of position, But not only, I mean, he's in an immobile 80 carry, but it doesn't seem like that with his blue suede shoes, bows back and forth, and he goes straight towards RC. The flash comes off of Sia. White Lotus follows up with his own flash, so they were able to outplay the position that they were currently in and turn it into a win for them.
Look, Saya just has nerves of steel right now, holding on to that hourglass to the last possible moment. We're going to see that fight once again.
So initially, Oddie goes down to the pick from Albus, and look at White Lotus, right? He's out of position. We don't get a chance to see it. You're just going to have to imagine it, ladies and gentlemen.
We saw it once before. Everything goes bad for ANX. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, man. But you could see, you saw the initial setup from White Lotus. He was out of position, and right now, Gerald could be out of position.
Stay host, he might be in trouble, gets taken down to half health. No enchanted crystal arrow for White Lotus, but they might not need it with the cocoon. Gerald flashes forward, unable to find the stun. Oddie just completely gets bodied. Now Steos looking for one on Gerald, actually stops the jump, but the consume comes out from Arce just in time. He's an absolute guardian angel of his own right now. There's a curtain call coming in. He still has that grey health available, so shouldn't be in too much danger.
Cassio's on the flank. She's willing to come in if Albus NoX walk too far forward.
Oh, we know Saya's willing to come in, man. This guy goes ham at the click of a button.
But PvP Steos needs to watch out. He's been taking far too much damage going in and out, so he's in a position where he simply needs to back away.
He's working towards that GA right now because he realizes how much time he's spending on the front lines. But unfortunately for Oddie, did end up going down, a little bit too overzealous. But props to Albus as well for splitting up the Lyon team. They actually did a great job of using the Gangplank ultimate to dissuade Lyon from going for the re-engage, which was honestly what enabled them to get that kill, but they then couldn't transition it into further objectives, because if they continued to commit onto that tier 2 in the mids, then there was that risk of, say, coming in from the flank, getting that multi-man ultimate off, and suddenly swinging in the favor of Lyon once again.
Both the AD carries of these teams racking up a lot of damage right now. Miracle has completed maybe 3 items here, looking for a 4th on the way.
Just want to quickly add that Sayer does have 10 stacks on his Dark Seal.
Oh, wow.
Fair play. Very difficult to get and maintain stacks, but just thought it was worth an admirable mention. If he turns that into Mejai's, he has my respect.
So look, 36 minutes in the game, and Lyon, they're ahead 4,000 gold at the moment. They do have that 2-tower advantage as well. 2 Infernal Drakes to the 1, so they still have a little bit of fire on the side of ANX, but Lyon Gaming looking very formidable right now.
Lyon right now are playing well to keep in these team fights, even though they seem fairly obnoxious overall. Focus needs to be coming on to Gerald, because Gerald needs to be that flanking force. We've been seeing it from Seiya. Unsuccessfully from Audi, he's found himself getting caught off guard in that position. It needs to be Gerald. If they're going to be playing towards this Baron, he needs to be in another position, but Ashalti comes out.
Does land onto Lecrit once again. There's a curtain call onto White Lotus. Arce gets him to safety, but this is looking bad.
Gerald?
In the back line, Oddie and Gerald trying to find it. Miracle does get slowed, has the cleanse effect available. Not able to find more.
Miracle just barely able to get out. Oddie in the same situation. He needs to be careful not to get sniped again. I think he's learned his lesson. He is going to back away, but Lyon trying to set up a play. They land the Ash Arrow onto Liquid again. He doesn't have the QSS. He ended up going down. Unfortunately for Lyon, they didn't end up losing anyone on the back end. But Albus, they're still in a great position right now. A lot of ultimates have been used, but Kira, his has just come back up. So Lyon, if they want to go for that Baron, this is incredibly risky. The biggest advantage for Lyon that they've gained is the fact that so many flashes were used on the side of Albus, which means that getting onto Kira is going to be so much easier.
Look, and look at some of the level differences right now. Seiya and White Lotus both have 2 levels over their opponents in the lane. The only advantage coming from Smurf up in the top, level 18 to Gerald 17. So the raw stats from Lyon are ahead just on that alone.
One good thing about Albus NoX's composition is, though, right now Lyon, they can look to burn it down, especially once Seiya commits to the Baron, but there's so much poke and engage coming from Albus NoX, they won't let this go.
Oh, Sehos comes on in, not gonna find it, can't find the kill either, dies for his trouble. Licrit's over the wall, bouncing it around. Oddie does have the Guardian Angel to keep him safe, but now White Lotus might be in trouble with a massive outplay. Survives and then sidesteps the snipe. Now in the backline, Seiya just giving them such a hard time. Kira, can he find his way to safety? One more attack should do it. Gerald picks up that. There is the curtain call coming on through Seiya with enough extra health off the Seraph. Survives another one.
These players are just so damn good. White Lotus with just impeccable sidestepping in that Baron pick. He should have died. Any other AD carry would have lost their life, but his ability to just avoid everything was absolutely fantastic. Seiya coming in from the flank, effectively 1 versus 4, and just holding his own. These two carries have shown time and time again why they are so good. And they are a large part as to why LYN is doing so well.
Exactly, and I've questioned a lot of the scenarios. Now, of course, Audi gets saved here. White Lotus is in an awful position. The brand passive procs, not only does it get the GA off of Elise, but he's in an awful position. He's skirting between life and death, able to go back and forth. Literally, he is the Argentinian masterpiece. He is just his ability to not get killed is fantastic.
That was so he sidestepped a Varus Q. He flashed a Gangplank barrel and the Gragas barrel. He was able to he noticed that he was stuck in the Baron pit, and rather than dying, he just kills the crit. It was just, so good. So good.
Look, we got Giddy just watching it again, but now LYN, they're barreling down the mid lane. A second Baron buff this time around as well as the Elder Dragon with 2 Infernals and a Mountain, amplifying that damage so much. And now White Lotus has 4 items. So damn strong. The ulti coming down from Kira, just a deterrent at this stage. Heard the Enchanted Crystal Arrow go off, but it's not the go button just yet.
See, now, I would always look to question the ability of, let's say, an Ashes. Oh, actually.
Well, Pyroclasm comes down. Only does a lot of damage onto Jural, but he has a Guardian Angel and a bit of MR.
So this is the problem that LYN are currently experiencing, where Albus have so much poke and pick power that whenever LYN try to take a turret, it is just so much effort because they take so much damage that it's very difficult for them to actually commit to a dive. Fortunately, that Jural goes back to base and is now able to TP back in, means that LYN are in a better position to continue this siege.
And it's looking bad here for ANX. I don't think there's a lot they can do. They're trying to get down their poke, but that's just the power that Baron-empowered minions have. Arce does take quite a bit of damage, gets sniped by Kira. Could this be a window for them to find Seos? Can't get in. That wall of cannon minions is being too much. He gets destroyed, and now Oddie in the backline along with Jural trying to find something. Does get the kill, trades his Guardian Angel for it, but this is looking good for LYN.
Oh, no, he's not. Gets bursted down.
Oh, man. He woke up to a barrel surprise, the Gangplank special. Don't think he ordered it, but regardless, he got it anyway. And LYN, they're just going to back off with picking up 2 inhibitors. Perhaps falling back to some traits that we saw during the group stages, while LYN, knowing that they have a lead, were a little bit overzealous in trying to commit to these objectives. But overall, they still break into the base. That's what matters. They still have the Baron available. They can now rotate to the top half of the map and just use the Baron-empowered minions to, the super minions to just push in the other 2 side lanes.
Look, and they've also got White Lotus, who's been playing impeccably this entire game. Just fancy feet, nearly completed build. He has a completed build here.
Do you want to give a shout out to Arce as well? I mean, what is an AD carry without his support? And the number of saves that Arce has made throughout this game has honestly been outstanding. I wish there was some kind of stat for the number of people that he's saved on a slither of health, because he has done a phenomenal job on this Tom Cat.
I guess it would be how many times has W been on cooldown is the number of teammates he's saved, because we could be singing a completely different song had they not been on the Tahm Kench.
Yeah, the Tahm Kench has been a saving grace from the very beginning to the very end, so... Even
it's not over yet.
That's true. That's true. In fact, it only can get worse. Down to inhibs. Now they actually have to commit as a team. One final team fight is a constant worry now going into the trying to kill the actual Nexus.
If we just look across the board, all GAs are currently down. And the Gangplank, late game Gangplank is definitely a scary thing. He has Flame Horizoned Jural. He's definitely at a point where his damage cannot afford to be underestimated. Let's not forget that incredibly long game between, I believe it was KMV and Saigon Jokers, where the Gangplank barrel literally one-shot the Lucian. So that is the player that they need to keep their eyes on, but Jural's doing a good job of keeping him distracted.
Yeah, Jural's been... He had to be the one sole tank, of course, of being able to dive into the back line and get it going for his team, create a lot of space, and he's been doing just that. With his GA, there's a lot of players that they have GA, they play far too passively, and it really does go to waste, but he's just been diving on through.
Really can't find their way in just yet, trying to keep those super minion waves pushed up. Keep in mind, no Baron, no Elder Dragon available for the side of Lyon, so they're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way, brute force and a ton of items.
It's so hard, though, because there's a lot of wave clear on Albus. They have so much poke that if Lyon just stand underneath the turret, they're eventually going to get whittled down. And their ability to hard engage is actually fairly weak. They have the Ash arrow, but now look at this. QSS finished for Licrit as well. He realized he was getting picked off one too many times, so he's picked that up for himself. And you've also got the QSS onto Miracle and Kira, and the oranges on top of Smurf. So who do you now fire that arrow onto? You can't go for a flank in the enemy base. So it's very difficult for Lyon. Their best bet now is to just keep the pressure up, move round to the Baron, and wait for that objective to be available.
Yeah, they're actually doing something incredibly smart. They're pin control of this red side jungle, as you can see on the mini-map, completely dead. There is no vision at all. So the fact that they're bouncing between mid and top lane meant that they were just waiting for the waves to become an actual problem in the bottom lane. GP does have to consistently look to pick this up. Instead of actually crashing on the tower, which I believe they should have done, they started to back away, and it seems like now the pressure and the real task will be looking towards Baron now.
To see if they can go for it. Without a lot of vision, it's going to be very difficult for them to find their way into the thick of it. And Baron spawning in 10 seconds. Lyon already in position to go for this one. Oddie just precautionary sweep.
But that gives Albus Noox a little bit of an opportunity. They really didn't have to make this a Baron situation. They didn't really have to rely on it. They were doing a good job at waiting for the waves to crash. They should have just actually pressed the button towards that top side. Maybe even choose to disengage depending on Gangplank's positioning. But use your waves, and it feels like right now they're just going to try and use those waves towards this Baron take.
Baron has been started, health dropping lower and lower. You can see both the top lane is not even there. They have teleport available. He's just going to get smited by Oddie. Both ultins being used by the carries on the side of ANX. Unable to find anything though, so this could be the end.
Lyon have everything that they need to close out this game now. Ooh, as the fight kicks off.
Oh, but do they have the members getting 2 kills just like that? ANX answer.
They thought they had the answers.
Oh, Jarrell forced a flash. Sejos comes on in, the CC being layered down, gets the kill, and out of nowhere, Albus NoX come in and they come in swinging.
Look at those death timers. Only 2 members alive for Lyon. Albus, this is a prime opportunity to try and push into the base of Lyon.
I cannot believe what we are seeing. They were on the brink of death. They had nothing but 1 or 2 towers remaining. Then they get 2 picks. White Lotus and Arce overconfident, caught out of position, not respecting Lecrit's brand, and they're going to pay for it.
That's the worry that we had initially, that they actually had to inevitably walk towards the Nexus and try and take it. Now they had the Baron. They're trying to get all their chips in order to be able to actually not have to commit to a fight. They get picked off, and now this is what Albus Noox want. They want that one opportunity to actually get their damage down, that they're comfortable in, and they get the picks necessary.
The thing is, Lyon felt so comfortable in the top half of the jungle because that had become their playground for the last 5 to 10 minutes. The problem is, the moment they got that Baron, they then moved through what they believed to be their territory, which ANX had actually reclaimed for themselves. And like, that was a bad pick. There is no other way to set that one up. Like, so aggressive, you literally brought your AD carry into his own death. You had everything that you needed to close out that game. You put Jarrell in a side lane, you group up as 4 members in the top, and then you just use the Baron-empowered minions to close things out, and instead you try to force a fight and you end up getting punished for it.
So now, DeLine, did they just have to reset and kind of rinse and repeat, do the same thing, get control, try to get the inhibitors, or after that they have to give so much respect to this ANX squad?
They need to be careful trying to force this fight because it could very well end up backfiring in their face.
Only a lot of damage onto Arce Sejos. He has to be careful. Does have the Guardian Angel available. Now Lecrit in trouble. He's just going to get bursted out immediately. Jarrell able to find the CC onto Sejos, but that's not the target they're looking for. The carries, they're still untouched. Guardian Angel is going to be popped, but that's the complete frontline dead for the ANX squad. Oddie in the back. Can he find something? Cocoon lands on a minion.
He's going right in there.
They're trying to get in. Actually cancels at the last minute. They thought, hey, this is what happened last time when we nearly threw the game.
Wait a minute. But it is going to be the inhibitor going down to White Lotus. And in all honesty, this is just the difference with having a tanky frontline versus a squishy frontline. Yeah. Licrit ended up dropping way too quickly. When you have the Tahm Kench and you have Oddie building what is effectively full tank, it becomes very difficult for this poke of ANX to be able to shred through when Lyon is hard engaging that hard. So This is just a difference in the composition. Lyon now, they can transition over to the Elder Drake. They've gotten themselves another inhibitor, and they've reclaimed control of this game.
Yeah, exactly. Not only is Jural a major tanky force, but even Elise. She has the slows with the Rylai's Crystal Scepter, but not only did she have the Dead Man's Play, she has the Randuin's Omen. So she can walk in, get that flashy play, but all she really is, that's all her task is, just to tank as much damage, play the fight front to back, because they can do it so much easier than Albus NoX at this point in the game.
Someone finally gets in Arce. He was, guys, there's a big minion wave. Anyone? Hello? All right, just me. Oddie does decide he wants that one, but everyone's reaching full build, so who else can really get that gold? It's got to be Oddie and Arce at this stage.
At this point, what you do is you go back to base, you sell your boots, you buy a ZZ Rock portal, you put it down, then you go back to base, you sell the ZZ Rock portal, and you buy your boots again.
That's next level.
That's the answer.
That was actually a spawn strategy that you was talking to me about the other day when the game went to like 60 minutes and you was just like, both teams could do it because they just have such an excess level of gold. So
hey man, hey, you're an EU caster. I've seen that Fnatic game. 70 minutes in, you just buy as many Zerat's portals as possible.
Normally it's just the defending team, but the aggressing team can do it as well.
Yeah.
If you have that much excess gold, it's definitely a strategy. Problem is, it's not a time efficient because the amount of time required to set up the ZZ Rots, then go back to base and replace the items, you know, the enemy team could just clear out the ZZ Rots in that time. So when you have the Elder Drake, you want to try and push it. It only lasts for about 2 minutes. So you want to try and take advantage of that as much as possible. The question is, how are LYN going to be able to force their way into this turret? Because we've already seen this setup before. It didn't work for them before.
Oh no, Miracle gets hit by the arrow, is able to cleanse it in time. You can see Steros just body blocking for him right now. Jural and Smurf, a 1v1 in the bot lane.
Oops.
See, that's going to be a problem, especially since LYN right now, they can't really utilize the Ash arrow simply because even if that was the perfect Ash arrow, it got onto Miracle, but they had no follow-up. They simply cannot aggress.
Arce once again there. Right place, right time. Manages to save White Lotus from the curtain call.
Oh, here we go.
Jural just bullying out Smurf. He's forced to go back. That's going to be a free inhibitor. Abyssal Voyage brings White Lotus and Arce to the party. Sayer's there as well. Super Minions barreling down the mid lane. This could be ANX's last chance at a defense. White Lotus just flashes in there looking for some damage, not able to find it. First Nexus Tower might fall. There still is one Super Minion tanking them both up. Deadly Flash gets the snare onto Jural. No minions though left.
LYN, they're just trying to use the power of these minions to just push down the last two Nexus turrets. They are able to get themselves one. They've realized that that top tower is not really an effective strategy. So this is just their next play that they have available. The Ash Arrow is coming back up. QSS is still down.
Oh, Steos, he does get caught by the Cocoon, but Oddie, he is going to get snared up very, very low. Does have the Guardian Angel repels actually to save it. Smurf trying to find the damage on Jural, can't find it. Oddie does get popped in the meantime. Sayer just going to be playing point for him, making sure he can't go down. But once again, LYN, they can't seem to find the Nexus.
Yeah, and Jural TP'd into that. He wanted to back and get full HP. He especially wanted to TP onto the minion that was taking the turret damage, so they wanted to end it off with that one push. But this is how difficult it is to really take this Nexus, because you really do have to commit to at least a firm team fight. Whew, there we go.
That's an ultimate coming out of Gangplank. They look like they want to go for something. Arce forced a flash. Curtain Call not going to land. The force shot not coming through. But Sehos, he does get hit by the Enchanted Crystal Arrow barrels. Provide them a nice defensive.
The longer Lions stay on the map, the harder it is to regain control on Baron. So they need to get back fast, because 3 seconds up now, PvP Steos, ANX can just go straight towards it.
We only have one Nexus Tower remaining, and that's 2 inhibitors down, so Smurfy has to still remain at this base for now.
This was incredibly smart from Albus, because they realized that the next objective is that Baron. And rather than allow LYN the opportunity to go back to base, they've just kept the pressure on. They followed them the moment the LYN left, and this enables them to reclaim control of the top half of their jungle and just get a bit of positioning around the Baron, which is forcing LYN to now make a decision, because if they go back, they're going to lose it.
Oh, a lot of damage onto Oddie. The Baron wailing on him right now. Arce trying to give Sayer the protection he needs. Sehos does have the Guardian Angel available, so they can't afford to overcommit for that one, but that's 5 members strong for LYN at the Baron. Smurf was making his way down, but that's mid inhibitor back up.
Great from Lyon Gaming to be able to regain control of Baron, to just stagnate their backs. Now they have to do it once again for Audi to come back and regain pressure. Maybe they're going to start up on it again. It's going to give opportunity for PvP Stagos to come back, though.
They don't have vision. There's the ulti. Kira, he does flash to safety, gets himself out to roll, does find the kill onto Liquid, flashes onto a Miracle. He might be in trouble. He's about to go mega, slams him into the wall. He's got not long for this world trying to find it. He's still alive somehow. No way he gets that kill. Jural is able to find it in the end. Smurf pops the GA, but here comes Audi finding the targets, finding the kills, and potentially finding the first game of this best of 5.
Seiya with the hero play goes in for the flash ultimate, just like he's been doing throughout this game, and this should be enough to secure Lyon the first game in this series.
Yeah.
Look, Smurf, he's still alive, he's still trying to survive, but he's not long for this world. Barreling down the lane, one tower stands between them and going 1-0 in this best of 5 series. There's the tower, should be falling any minute now. The Nexus completely naked, no hope. ANX, a valiant defense, but in the end, they do get taken out in the first game.
And Lyon, that is their first victory on the way to Worlds. Definitely a lot closer than I initially anticipated, but what a back and forth game. Very exciting to watch. One of the biggest issues I feel that we need to highlight was we saw the power of both comps in that game, where you had a lot of poke coming out from the side of Albus NoX, which was making things really difficult for the side of Lyon to actually get the engage. Albus got a little bit too cocky, they overstepped in the mid, and that's suddenly where Lyon swung the game in their favor, because you had the flank come in from Jural. Seiya had no issues just barreling down the team, and when he was finally able to get onto the backline, there was nothing they could do against that Casio. That transitioned into a Baron, and then after that Baron, it was just very back and forth between the two teams.
Yeah, exactly. And Lyon had the gold lead for quite a long time. Major point. This was a major statement, and I love the fact that we got to see this play once again. Saw a replay of it earlier.
That's the third time we've seen it. It's that hype.
It really is a well-done place. Ulti, major point about this game is the fact that the statement of simply giving Albus NoX every pick that they wanted. They got the brand. They got the Jhin. They had the composition that they usually rely on, and the statement of Lyon being able to close out the game. Of course, it was difficult to close out the game, but the fact that they had the gold lead for essentially the majority of it means a lot, especially for game 1.
I wonder if this replay, we can count how many times Arce did actually save people from certain deaths.
This was the replay we really wanted to highlight early on, and it just keep your eyes on what Seiya does, right? Because White Lotus, he's in a tricky situation. He's just sidestepping. Seiya just does the hero play, and he's like, I'm going in. He gets the flash play onto Kira. He shuts him down, the immediate Zhonya's, and then the flash from White Lotus. He's just like, I've got you, fam. He's there to just provide support for his mid lane. And like that's just so great to see. The fact that it was Seiya going in to keep his AD carry alive, followed by his AD carry going in to keep his mid laner alive. And that was just really exceptional to see. And then Arce gives his life away at the very end in the name of his AD carry.
Yeah, but toss it up to Kira. Kira actually played this game exceptionally well. Was it putting his team in an amazing position to set up these fights that were in their lead, in their favor. But time and time again, Lyon outplay. Lyon showed their individual strengths as players, and they just go in. That's their aggression right there.
Can't get enough of that White Lotus play.
No.
I hope that makes it onto the front page of Reddit. And then Lyon throw it there. Lyon were looking really good, and then they do that.
That's the play we hope doesn't make it onto the front page of Reddit videos.
But I mean, that was greedy. That was a mistake from Lyon. Fortunately for them, they were able to bring it back. But in all honesty, like because of this hero play, really good flash in from Seiya, it immediately splits up Albus, and then Jural's freely able to get onto the backline. This is where he can shred through Miracle. And when you're in a 1 versus 1 like this is the ideal situation for Lyon to be in, because then the rest of their team can just do whatever they want, you know? So overall, great setup from both teams, in all honesty. Like there were strong moments, but there were also big weaknesses that both teams did a good job of punishing, but it's why we saw such back and forth, because when a team had a lead, they didn't hold on to it. They just made that one mistake which threw it back in the enemy team's favor.
Exactly, and from the very beginning to the very end, of course, the brand came up with 8 deaths. The reason for that was simply because he had a lot of focus. They focused him down early. They focused him down quickly. He had to go for a fairly pricey build, and he really couldn't get it till the very end, and the reason for that was even though he got the early kill, they made an effort to keep him down from the beginning. So he was outputting a lot of damage, could have done a lot more, but great focus from Lyon.
Look, and if that's any indication of what's to come, we're in for an amazing series. We're going to go to a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more League of Legends.